I had a horse that broke his leg and died. That horse, for me, somewhat changed my world. His name was Make Mine a Good Bar, and I felt a serious connection with him from the first time I ever rode him. He introduced me to everyone in the industry. He was my first really good horse, along with just being special to me in that I felt like our souls always felt connected. I truly believe I wouldn't be here in my career without him.
Bring them in on the rail at a jog, please. On the rail at a jog.
All right. So welcome back to another episode of On the Rail podcast. And today we have a new guest. Her name is Beth Clemons, and we will let her go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Beth Clemons. I am a horse trainer. I currently own my own business as well as for Jim and Deanna Searles.
Perfect. How did you get your start in the industry? What made you want to become a horse trainer?
Well, I've been riding most of my life. I started riding Western all-around horses when I was around 12 or 13 after moving our trail horses to a boarding facility that had a trainer that did those events. And she let me ride young green horses. And ever since then, that's all I wanted to do.
Perfect. Do you have like a certain moment in time where you just decided that training would like be your route, or was it just kind of like a natural growth into your adult life?
As a teenager, like I said, it was my dream to be a horse trainer. I just absolutely loved riding, loved horses, wanted to do it for the rest of my life. And I did go to college, and I actually worked in marketing for Red Bull and Vans. And when I was working at Vans, I was pretty convinced that I was actually going to stay in marketing and ideally work for Vans. It was a great atmosphere, a ton of fun. And then the economy turned and they laid off half of their employees, and I happened to be one of them. So I was really lost at that point. I didn't know what to do. So I actually moved home and decided that I should go work for a horse trainer. And so I went and worked for Tanya Brown, and that's really how this all came about.
I always find it interesting to see where people came from in the horse industry. Like, you know, we have our amateurs that work for a living to be able to do the horse thing, but the trainers, you never know what their background is. So that's pretty cool that you did marketing for a while.
Where's your home at, or where are you from originally?
I am from Carlsbad, California, so near San Diego, a little bit north of San Diego, close to Del Mar, where we have had great horse shows.
Beautiful area. Yeah. And so how did you end up in Scottsdale then? Was that to specifically go work with the Searles, or did you end up there after you had moved to the area?
I had my training business in California for many, many years after working for Tanya Brown. And I basically, yes, I came to work for the Searles is how I ended up in Scottsdale. There's a long, drawn-out story involved in that, but that's how I ended up in Scottsdale.
Can you kind of give your involvement now? Like what are your clients? What are you primarily, like what's your focus in your training program? Do you have a certain discipline?
So probably my focused events, what I'm, I guess you would say known for, is trail and Western riding. I do have clients that do other events. I've recently started doing ranch riding again after 5 years of not doing that, having a ton of fun with that. But my clients also do horsemanship, showmanship, eck, the other pleasure, the other events that go along with the all around.
Perfect. I always enjoy watching your trail videos when you post them from shows. I love watching trail.
Oh, thank you.
So with that being said, with all the titles that you've been able to win and accomplish, are there any that stand out the most to you or have the most meaning?
I would definitely say that when I won the Level 2 Senior Trail at the World Show, that was a huge accomplishment for me. It was 2020, so it was COVID year. I actually won on one of my own customers' horses, so that was really important to me. She had moved her horse to Scottsdale from California with me, and I had worked really hard on this particular horse, and kind of during COVID, because she was unable to come out and travel to ride, I kind of took him apart to try to make him better. So to have at the end of that year him win such an amazing title was really, really special for me. And being draw 36 in the trail when there's 200 in it made it even more special, because I believe I won by 4 points. There was nobody really even close by the end of the day. So I was really, really proud of that. And it was a really special moment for me, and obviously really excited for the owner and that horse.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. Especially by that far of a lead with, 200 draws to go. That's crazy.
It was a long day.
Those usually are, it feels like.
Yeah, especially when they have the horse show tracker.
Oh, yeah. Watching all of those draws just one by one go. Yes.
Yep.
Going back to the business side of things, for anyone listening that would be interested in becoming a trainer or doing, something like that for their adult years, what is one personality trait that you think is like a must-have to make it in the industry?
I would definitely say resilience is really important. I personally don't have a parent that's a horse trainer, or I didn't have a youth career that was stellar. We couldn't afford to have the big, nice horses. I had never shown at the World Show until I was an open rider. And I always tell people and tease that I've just scratched and clawed my way to the point I'm at now. And there's been plenty of times I've wanted to quit, but just that resilience of when people tell you you can't do it, or when you feel like you can't do it, or if you hit a spot that I had a point where my best horse died and my second favorite horse, the lady, left the next day, and I just wanted to quit, but I didn't. Luckily, had very supportive people in my life. And just that resilience is very, very necessary in this industry.
I would have to agree with that one for sure. Even as an amateur, sometimes I feel like we all get a little overwhelmed, and this industry can eat you up and swallow you a little bit.
Absolutely.
On those days that you felt like quitting, you said you had a great support system, but what kept your head in the game? What did you do to help refocus and recenter yourself?
I always find nature to be very therapeutic. So there's been times where I'm having a really rough day, and I'll just drive up to the mountains if it's snowed and go play in the snow, or find somewhere to go hike, or my boyfriend has an off-road truck, so we'll go off-road. I always try to make sure that I have balance in my life where I'm not just focusing on work, and those things really help ease the stress of it and put it into perspective, because when you're in the horse industry, you really truly believe that it is the whole world and you're so involved, but there's so much more to life, and it's really important to be reminded of that.
Do you take or plan specific, maybe a vacation or a few weeks out of the year to not be doing horses? I mean, I know that's your business and you literally can never get fully away from it, especially as an all-around trainer. You can go 100 miles an hour every day of the year, all year long, and could be on the road all year long too. So do you schedule your year out in advance with shows as well as trying to find some quote downtime in there?
I absolutely try to plan downtime if possible, which is kind of a recent thing for me, to be perfectly honest. When I ran my own business in California, and that's all I did, I had a ton of horses and oftentimes was working 7 days a week, 15 to 17 hours a day. I, leased a property, so everything was my responsibility. Now, with working for the Searles, they find it very important to take vacation and spend time with family and have downtime. And so they've been really inspirational for me in that portion of my life. So now I try to schedule, whether it be a weekend hiking with one of my friends, or last year I got to go to Maui with my boyfriend. I definitely try to plan things, but it is difficult to schedule around the horses and around your clients' schedules, as well as my boyfriend's a farrier. So he
goodness.
has scheduled clients every 6 weeks that don't always have the luxury of waiting on him to get back from vacation. So it is definitely difficult, but it is absolutely a necessity.
Do you think that's something younger trainers probably struggle with, is establishing boundaries on their time and just the downtime part of it to create balance?
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely struggled with it. I am very lucky to have a supportive boyfriend because in the 7 years I ran my own business, I would get home at 7:30 at night and be exhausted and fall asleep on the couch, and he'd make me dinner. And I think it's one of the reasons so many relationships fail in our industry is because people don't have balance in it. And it's a very competitive field. And the thing about clients is there are a lot, especially when you first start out, that will just keep asking for more. And I hope that all young trainers can learn quickly in their training careers that it is okay to say no sometimes. And it is important to say no because what you allow becomes expectation. And it's important for you to maintain your own personal boundaries. And that can be really, really blurred in our industry.
For sure. Would you say you think you are a better trainer because of your boundaries? Does it allow you to be better on the professional side of it, to perform there because you, on the other side of it, take your personal time?
Absolutely. Admittedly, I was extremely cranky when I was going that many hours and 7 days a week. I can't do a good job for my customers. I was always really good with the horses, but I really, really struggled with having patience with the customers when I was working that many hours and not having a break. Now that I force myself to take breaks and force myself to have the downtime, I am way more patient with customers, and I actually feel like my customers progress way faster than they did before because I'm able to take a breath and think about what I say instead of just automatically reacting because I'm exhausted all the time.
I think I've heard a lot of trainers say that the horses are the easy part. They're the piece of cake. It's dealing with the owners and the customers and the clients. That's the part that gets to be exhausting.
Yes, and I am very blessed right now that because of my situation and working with the Searles that I really don't have to take anyone I don't want to. And I have an amazing group of customers right now. I really enjoy every single one of them.
That's always easy once you have those nice customers and clients to deal with. So on that note, with taking a break and getting some time to yourself, what is your show schedule like? Like, how often are you guys going to shows, and do you go for like the big ones, or do you hit some like weekend shows too? Or how do you guys balance your show schedule?
Well, we go to a lot of the big shows. We're not going to the Congress this year. We were supposed to be in Florida right now, which ended up being canceled. So right now we're actually home for a while gearing up for the World Show. I do try to find shows that are a little bit smaller to take my customers to so that they can get the practice. And then sometimes if Jim and Deanna cannot come, sometimes Kathy will send some horses and come show. But for the most part, we hit the big shows. And if they're in town and want it basically with the Searles, it depends on where Susie and Kathy want to go. They don't have to go to all of the weekend shows. I choose to take my customers to some because they need some practice or maybe they got a new horse. Plus, it's just, I really like to support the local shows.
Definitely. How big of an impact was that for you that the Ocala, the championship show, got canceled? Did you guys already have plans and hotels and everything reserved?
Missed the hurricane at least.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah. I would assume that they probably had hotels booked. I personally don't have to deal with that end of it. We really were looking forward to it. I know that our customers really, really liked the Florida horse shows. It was definitely disappointing to have it canceled. Everybody was disappointed. I think at this point, it's a little bit of a relief after having the hurricane go through at the same time we would have been there. But yeah, we had planned to take the horses out early and spend a week at a farm out there. And it changed a lot of things for me because I was supposed to go to a horse show in California. I actually had a broken wrist at the time. So the cancellation of Florida made me able to cancel that show and go to a show here at Westworld last week instead, whereas normally I would have been potentially driving to Florida.
What is hauling horses like going from Arizona to Florida? How do you guys do that?
Well, Jim has a driver for his rig that drives his rig. And normally I do take my rig to Florida. There's normally enough horses to take and I could get extra hauls. We usually do it in 3 days. We stop generally near Amarillo, somewhere in Texas. And then we try on the way out there to stop close to the border of Florida and then have a shorter day the last day so that we can set up. Coming back, we usually will drive to Louisiana and then to New Mexico and then have a short last day on the way home. It is definitely a long drive. Lots of beautiful country. For me, I haven't seen a lot of the eastern part of the United States. So the first time I drove out there, it was really cool for me, but it is definitely a very long drive. It's a lot of hours.
How do you think the horses handle it?
Our horses are really good travelers and generally handle it really well. Like I said, we have good, comfortable layovers that we're used to using. So it's not too hard on them. I've actually hauled a yearling back from Florida to Scottsdale that I cannot even believe how well she handled it. I think people don't realize how well these horses actually do handle the trip. They get a little fresh sometimes by the time you get there on a long haul like that, but they definitely seem to ride comfortable in our rigs. And, we make sure that we take breaks when we need to and protect them as best as we can.
Sure, just being able to stop and unload them nightly or whenever you guys do stop, that helps it's not like they're on the trailer for the whole entire trip till you get there.
Yes, exactly.
So on the training end of it, can you kind of walk us through like a day in your life? Like, what do you do daily? Do you wake up? What's your morning routine like? How do you go about your day and everything like that?
Well, I'm a morning person, so I wake up early. If I don't, my dog wakes me up. So I'm not one of those people that likes to drag out my morning. I'm kind of a hop in the shower, have a quick breakfast, get out the door and get to work. If I don't start my day like that, I'm not really motivated to do much. I mean, I'm not one of those people that could start working in the afternoon. Let's put it that way. So for me, it's doing that, getting out there. I usually walk the ranch and check on all the horses, make sure everybody's okay in the morning, no new cuts or scrapes or anything. We have a lot of mares and babies, so always good to check on everybody. And then I usually, if I need to set trail course or the Western riding line, I'll do that before I get going saddling horses. I like to start riding by 6:30. Usually I don't take lunch because I find if I go back to the air conditioning, especially in the summer, I don't have a lot of motivation to come back out. So I usually just take snacks down to the barn with me and kind of snack throughout the day and just keep riding as much as I can. In the afternoon, sometimes go work with the babies, groom the brood mares, that kind of thing. But lots of lunging, riding, depending on how everybody was the day before, usually determines kind of the schedule for the next day. If I feel like somebody needs extra attention, I might start out with them so that I make sure that they have what they need first thing in the morning. But for the most part, I just do a lot of riding.
How does your schedule adjust in the summertime when it gets so hot? I mean, I assume you probably aren't riding in the afternoons.
Yeah, so in the summertime, we can't ride after 1. It's not really safe. So I start as early as possible. Usually gets light around 5. So I try to get out there as early as I can and start working. And then we're usually wrapping it up by 1 o'clock, which, as we talked about earlier, having that balance really helps with the balance, because then a lot of the times I'll go to the lake and surf with a couple of my friends, or maybe even go up to, my parents live up in the mountains about an hour and a half away. I could go up there and hike or spend the afternoon golfing with them. So the summer is very difficult in the sense of it's hot and we can't ride as much, but it is very good for the mental balance and not kind of giving ourselves a break when we're home.
And are you the only one riding out there most of the time, or you guys got like a crazy barn full of people always riding, or kind of what's your environment like?
Well, Jim and Deanna are there. Deanna does a lot of riding with me when she's home. Jim does more of the office and the breeding work, but he is out riding often as well. We have customers come. My customers come for lessons usually twice a week. So they'll be out there. Susie and Kathy come and ride sometimes 6 days a week, depending on if they're really getting ready for something. I wouldn't consider it being crazy, but I'm not alone all the time, that's for sure.
Definitely keeps the barn atmosphere more upbeat, I feel like, not being alone all the time and getting to ride around with your friends and clients and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I will say that sometimes I do enjoy just a day by myself at the ranch because I feel like I can get a lot accomplished, but I wouldn't want it to be that way every day.
Do you have many young horses you're starting out there, or is it pretty much just the all around more I don't want to say they're firmly established.
We have everything. They breed and raise babies here. I also have customers that have yearlings and 2-year-olds coming up. So I personally haven't been starting colts myself lately. I did a couple of years ago, but I haven't the last couple of years just because of time constraints. But I do ride 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. We teach them the all-around events. We also have all-around horses like Suddenly a Good Bar, who's, I believe, going to be 19 next year, that obviously don't need to be ridden every single day. But we definitely have quite a few prospects between Kathy's breeding program and Jim and Deanna's, and then my customers' horses.
When do you like to start working on the all-around stuff with a horse? What age?
Depends on the horse. Almost anything training-wise, you have to listen to the horse. Some people say they have to do the pleasure before the all-around. I truly believe some horses mentally aren't going to be a good pleasure horse unless they're doing something else at the same time. So a lot of the times, if you have one that is a little bit busier minded, you're going to be better off starting to teach them some trail stuff than just trying to pound on them in the pleasure. I think that it's really important to let them kind of tell you when they're ready for what.
On that note, because you like showing the trail so much, maybe we can deep dive on that class a little bit. What attributes do you look for in a horse to start them on the trail? Is there anything in particular you look for?
Absolutely. A horse that's a really tight mover is going to have a harder time doing the trail. It's not to say that they can't. It's not to say that they can't be very talented. They are going to have a harder time learning to reach softly, I think. So if I look at something and think it's a great young pleasure prospect, it's probably not going to be the greatest young trail prospect. So I think that that is something that's very interesting because we breed for the pleasure, but when they go on to do the trail, it's important that they have enough step to make it over the trail strides. And I also think that something that has no knee at all that maybe would be desirable for the pleasure, it can be a little bit harder for them to get over the poles. I'm not saying that I want a horse with a ton of knee, but I don't want it so straight that it doesn't look like it can get up over a raised pole.
It's a good point to make.
It is like interesting to think about with focusing so hard on the pleasure and the breeding that we go for them, but yet how many still flunk out of being a top level pleasure horse. And thank God there's trail and like Western riding and things to go for them. But it does seem a little misguided that are maybe some of the top end pleasure horses wouldn't be the ideal all around horse either.
Absolutely. And I actually think it's really cool. The stud we have, Nothing But Net, is a great, great pleasure horse, but he also can go into those all-around events. He's won plenty of stuff in the Western riding and the trail. He's an excellent trail horse. He is an excellent Western rider, and he is an excellent pleasure horse. He's also won performance halter stallions at NSBA World. So I think that that is kind of unique to have a horse that's so good at all those different events. And I think that our industry would really be wise to start looking at that kind of thing, because I truly do believe that the future is not just in one event. I think that we need to start making sure that our horses are capable of doing more.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
That's crazy because we just had this conversation earlier today with another guest. So it's interesting to see that things align in such a way within our industry that people are starting to notice. Has there been a horse in your career so far that's like, I don't know, kind of surprised you, or maybe just like there was like a wow moment, or I don't know, is there just a horse that like comes to mind in this, like me asking this question?
So I guess I could say, as I touched on before, I had a horse that broke his leg and died. That horse for me somewhat changed my world. His name was Make Mine a Good Bar, and I felt a serious connection with him from the first time I ever rode him. He just was really special in that he had so much try and was so sweet and so quiet and also incredibly talented. His owner, Jan Carpenter, was honestly just the same way. She was an incredible owner and she fully supported me, which was amazing in the beginning of my career. But he really kind of introduced me to everyone in the industry. He was my first really good horse, along with just being special to me in that I felt he was really my heart horse, somewhat, or like our souls always felt connected. And like I said, so many people came up and tried to buy him, people that I never would have thought would ever look at me like I was important. At the time, he introduced me to a lot of people, a lot of big names in our industry, including really Jim and Deanna. We knew each other, but he is actually probably the sole reason that I work for them at this point. Deanna had approached me about buying him, and I teased that if she bought him, she'd have to hire me. And that's kind of how I ended up working for them after about a year of trying to make decisions. And obviously, he passed away right after she had approached me about buying him. And anybody who knew him knew how special he was. And it didn't really matter if they knew him like I knew him. He just attracted people. And he was a plain sorrel with a little strip down his face, but he just attracted people wherever he went.
Oh, and it's always the good ones that we lose too soon.
Absolutely. I truly believe I wouldn't be here in my career without him. However, everything happens for a reason. And it was really difficult for me at the time to understand why such an amazing animal could just suddenly break their leg and be out of my life. But I truly believe that he had a purpose in my life and he kind of fulfilled it. I still don't think it's fair that he's gone, but we don't get to make those decisions. So I just feel blessed that he was ever in my life at all, and especially as well his owner, who supported me so much and believed in me.
It's a neat, very neat story.
Yeah, great story and sad. The horses are like our life and they just know how to like break our heart sometimes. But yeah, everything does happen for a reason. Can you give us what you enjoy most? Like, what do you love the most about training horses or being with your clients? What do you like the most?
Well, I just love to see the progress. For me, training horses isn't necessarily about maintaining a older broke show horse. I really love the process of teaching the horses and the people. I love to see a horse that's never stepped over a trail pole and then take it and show it for the first time or have it win its first trail class. To me, that is the most rewarding part about the industry, as well as seeing customers that progress to the point where, you know, maybe they started out and they were placing barely in the top 10 and then they end up just going out and killing it and winning. It's that kind of thing for me. It's the progress that is really rewarding and keeps me motivated to just keep grinding.
I love that. Progress is always the goal, I feel like. Well, I wouldn't say it's always the goal for some, but I think we lose sight of how hard we work, and seeing that progress is always exciting.
Absolutely. I think in our industry right now, one of the difficult things is that people just want broke horses and nobody's really wanting to make them. And that's not necessarily talking trainers or customers. I feel like it's a combination of both. Everybody wants to go show, everybody wants to go win. Obviously, that's why we do it. But I do think that the reason that horse prices have been so crazy lately is because there's a lot less people willing to spend the time to make those broke horses.
In your neck of the woods, do you feel like the market has peaked? Do you feel like it's staying stagnant at the prices currently, or do you foresee it changing anytime soon?
Well, that's the big question, right? I don't know that anybody really has an answer to that question. I don't know that anybody really knows. The market has been absolutely crazy. Horse prices are outrageous, I want to say, but at the same time, when you start really thinking about the amount of money it takes to make one, is it really that outrageous? Some of it, yes, but at the same time, you see people complaining about a $25,000 2-year-old. But when you really think about stud fees and breeding costs, and hay right now is absolutely crazy. The labor of stall cleaners and training and everything you add into that, especially in my area, it costs a lot of money to get a horse to be a started 2-year-old. Just a started 2-year-old, it takes a lot of money. So I don't know that I foresee horse prices falling off a ton. But I definitely think the market is kind of reached its max at the moment for what it is. Time is going to tell, really. I really can't make a prediction on what's going to happen, to be honest with you, because I kind of would have assumed it would have fallen off a little bit more than it has by now. But I hope it doesn't. I hope that the horse market stays high. I hope that people can keep affording to spend the money.
If trail and Western riding is kind of your fortes, from what I gather, which is really, really cool. And those are two events that are huge and growing in popularity. And, the shows, they have hundreds of entries. So obviously they're uber competitive and getting more and more competitive. So how do you stay sharp with those? What's your kind of mindset as far as always trying to maintain that level of competition or getting your horses to peak right for the big shows? And just talk about that, how you kind of take that perspective with your horses.
I feel like I have a 2-part answer to that. So you mentioned horses peaking at the right time. That's something that is really a challenge, depending on how you look at it. I personally believe horses need downtime. I don't think you can keep a horse at its peak all year long. For example, my horse that I won the level 2 senior trail on, he was a very quiet horse. He was broke. I would often give him a month where I never even took him over a trail pole. I just kept him kind of fit. Leading up to the World Show, I did a lot of trail. And then actually at the show, I didn't do a lot of trail because I feel like they have to stay fresh on trail. The Western riding, a little bit different. I feel like if you ignore it and then just do it a little bit, they just get to anticipating. So I feel like the Western riding is something that needs a lot of practice kind of coming up to the show and at the show. But I feel like with these horses, you don't necessarily have to grind their event all year long, especially once they're broke. Once they're broke, once they're trained, sometimes it's good to just ride. Just let their brains have a mental break from it. And I think that that's the best way to get your horse to peak at the right time. As far as keeping the competitive edge and staying up with being highly competitive in those events, because they have become all the horses have become so good. All the trainers have become so good. I think one of the most important things is having eyes on the ground. Number one, I think that it's really important to have other horse trainers that are helping you, keeping their eyes on the ground, and also just learning from them. I think that you can learn something from anyone, and sometimes it might be something that you don't want to do. You might learn, okay, well, that's not something I want to put into my program. But there's so much for us to learn from each other. And I think trainers really lose sight of that. They think that it makes them look vulnerable. And personally, I love to help other trainers, and I love to get help from other trainers. I think it's really, really valuable. I think that it's really overlooked in our industry, but I think it's really what keeps you at the top of your game.
Yeah, I think sharing ideas is, commonly, we all say we're better together than independently.
Absolutely.
That's cool that you're part of feeling on top and staying sharp with your game is staying a student of the game as well.
Absolutely.
Jenna, did you have any other questions? I think mine were pretty much wrapped up.
No, I think you touched on it a little bit when it comes to looking for a good horse for the all around, or let's say trail and Western riding, we'll stick with that. And I know for the trail specifically, you said they need to have a certain stride length. Do you have other things that do you look for specific mindset characteristics, or, like how do you look at something and know like, oh, this could be a really great trail horse, or this could be a great Western rider?
When I go to try a horse, for example, I'll kind of try to do stuff wrong. I'll try to just pitch at the reins and not show it its stride and see, does it want to save itself? Does it not want to save itself? I'll kind of pull it around and poke it with my spurs and see, does it get mad? Does it just try to figure out what I'm asking? Those are the kind of things that are going to tell you if it's going to be a good amateur horse. If it doesn't want to save itself over a trail pole, it's probably not going to be a great novice amateur horse. If it gets mad when you accidentally poke it with its spur, probably not going to be a great novice amateur horse. So those are definitely things that I pay attention to when I'm trying a horse. I personally, when I'm shopping for a horse, really prefer to buy something that I've seen at horse shows. Most of the time I have bought horses that I've watched show for years and years and years. And personally, I like to do that because obviously I know what it behaves like at a horse show. A lot of people like to buy one that nobody in their area has seen. That's not really the case for me. I think it's a little bit safer to have seen what it looks like at a horse show, seen what it goes like, be able to talk to the person and honestly like have the other trainer potentially involved in the future. If I need something, it's always better if I can just ask. Or if I'm at a horse show and they see the horse and they're like, oh, they might give me a hint of what they've done to fix it in the past. Again, like we talked about before, I really believe in we're better together, and that it's important to know what you're buying and know who you're buying from. That's just as important as the amount of talent in the horse.
Do you see any trends going forward for the trail Western riding or horses in general, kind of that going into 2023 maybe or forward, like any projections on new styles, new trends, new trail maneuvers, anything there that you kind of see where the classes are headed?
I think they're going to have to come up with something because everybody's getting really good.
So good.
Horses are getting really good and really talented. I foresee Tim probably bringing back some more of the old school stuff, but nobody really can say with Tim. You just don't know what he's going to bring forward, and the other course designers what they're going to bring forward. But I think it's getting to the point where they're going to have to do something because the trainers in our industry are so incredibly talented and the horses are so incredibly talented that something is going to have to make them separate.
I can't even imagine trying to sit and watch all of these great horses go through a trail pattern and then scoring it. It boggles my mind, like trying to figure out, did one hit there out of the 200 runs? And yeah, that's just,
yeah,
they're getting really good.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I showed the trail at the World Show, when I won the level 2 senior, I had seen the finals pattern and I told Deanna, I really want to do this finals pattern. So when I went in for the level 2, she suggested be kind of safe, get into the finals. The first obstacle was really hard. It was a triangle that you had to jog in, stop with your front feet over the second pole that you jogged over, side pass around the top of the triangle, and then step off. So it was a really, really difficult obstacle. And she told me, just be safe on that. And I had practiced it every day for 2 weeks. And I looked at her and I said, I don't think I get to be safe. I'm draw 36. Nobody really knows who this horse is. Nobody really knows who I am. I said, I'm going to go for it. And I think you kind of have to do that these days. There's not really the option of being safe and then getting to end up in the level 3 finals. I'm starting to feel like that's just not an option anymore, especially not for me.
What a cool story, though.
Yeah, that maneuver that you were just talking about, I can't even fathom trying to complete that, especially at a world level. That's crazy, but a great story for sure.
Yeah. Not all of the horses got through that obstacle, I can tell you that, but I was very proud to plus it.
That's awesome.
Because it was incredibly difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a sense of confidence going in there that you're like, we're going to go for it, but you obviously I know you had done the work before you went, and you probably had some inclination that it would go well. Otherwise you wouldn't go for broke.
Well, yeah, like I said, I practiced it every day. At first, my horse was a little confused and I would say almost scared of it. So I did practice it every day at the beginning of my ride and the end of my ride for 2 weeks before we left to get to the World Show. I hate to say this, but I did have a little bit of confidence after watching everybody warm up, seeing that a lot of people had not practiced at home. I was pretty confident I was going to get through it. I might touch it, but I probably wasn't going to destroy it. So I felt like all that practice at home really had kind of given me an edge. And luckily it worked out.
Yeah, super cool.
So if we don't have any more questions, we'll let you get back to your busy day. You said you were doing headshots today. Is that for World Show ads?
No, I actually just got my real estate license amongst all of the other chaos in my life. So I just signed on with Keller Williams. So I'm doing headshots for business cards and advertising for real estate.
Exciting. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool. It was really nice chatting with you. Great insight. We always like talking to the trainers because you all are the same, but different. If that makes sense. You all have different points of view. And as you said, we can all learn from each other. So it's super interesting to get to talk to you guys. But otherwise, I think we're all good here today. It was very nice chatting with you.
Perfect timing because my dog just started snoring.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That.
I did forget, Jenna did bring up if you wanted to share any of like your training social media or if you have any specific route you would like any potential clients or anyone interested in chatting with you to hit you up at.
Well, I have my Beth Clemons Performance Horses Facebook page. I'm on Instagram under Beth Clemons and my Facebook under Beth Clemons. So I do have a website that is www.bethclemons.com. And those are pretty much all of my internet ways to connect with me.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, like I said, it was very nice chatting with you and we hope you have a great rest of the day.
Great. Thank you so much. You guys too.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
All right, that'll be your class. Bring them in and line them up.